Sol LeWitt was a very great artist. Unfortunately, he died about probably 10 years ago now. It's hard to talk about these early projects without taking into account what the artist did since these projects. Because if people talk about Sol LeWitt today, he's one of the icons, one of the most important artists of his time, represented in every museum around the world. But when I met him, he was very much at the beginning of his career. He's one artist that wasn't in the circle of Christo, if you like. And I got introduced to him by one of his galleries, very famous gallery, Paula Cooper, who really was a pioneer of the minimal art and conceptual art. The gallery establishment was very small, and for a long time I only collected works from Iliana Sonnabend, who was the ex-wife of Leo Castelli, who was the father really of pop art. Leo was the first to show Rauschenberg, Jasper Johns, Lichtenstein, Andy Warhol. And Iliana started her own gallery, first in Paris to introduce American artists to Europe, and then she came back to New York. I told her that I'm interested in minimal art and this new trend of conceptual art, and there's a gallery that really handles it. Could she please introduce me? So she walked me over to Paula Cooper's gallery, which was a few hundred meters away in Soho, and I met Paula. A different world, as I keep saying. And I was interested in Sol's work, and I started to collect it. It was completely different to the other works. It was very simple, thoughtful, and architectural, if you like. As for a while he worked in the studio of the famous Chinese-American artist I.M. Pei, and then he worked as a guard at MoMA to make a living. He came up at the same time as the minimal artists like Carl Andre, Judd, but his art was different. He coined the term conceptual art, and that stuck, that term. What he meant by conceptual art was that the idea is the artwork, the idea is the act of creation. It can be carried out by somebody else in the end, the making of it, if the instructions are precise, are not essential to be done by the artist. It can be done straight away, it can be done years later. In effect, like a musical composer, they can compose a piece of music which can be performed years later by a different orchestra or different singers. This concept that the making is secondary was groundbreaking. They developed a number of artists who used this concept to create works different to Sol's. Sol was, again, very different to the artists that I have met. He was very quiet, almost withdrawn, kept his conversations to the minimum. But I was intrigued by his art, and I sensed that he would be very important. And I asked him to come to Australia to do a project. He came, and he did 2 works. He did an enormous wall drawing, the entrance lobby of the art gallery, And then in Melbourne, he did a work at the National Gallery, Victoria, a much smaller, colorful work. He also designed the small booklet that we printed for the occasion. Making books also became one of his specialty. I mean, that work, both the Sydney and the Melbourne one, didn't have to be impermanent. That could have been saved, but obviously the gallery needed the wall for other displays, and it was never not his, not my intention to keep it up there forever. He was the most generous of artists. Even when he became successful, he encouraged young artists and swapped works with them.